For more, we're joined by Kent Moores, Executive Chairman of the High-Powered Global Energy Symposium. Welcome back to the show. Good to see you, Kent. Let me just follow on what Sean just talked about. I mean, the natural question that all of us have is, who is buying this black oil?
Well, the simple answer to that is a good deal of this is supposedly being purchased on the local markets in Kurdistan and in Syria. There are a number of separate smuggling venues that IS is using to get about 30,000 barrels a day out at significant discount. But a good deal of this is actually being processed or refined at very small local outlets for a fraction of what it would cost if the normal crude was being used. One interesting thing in all of this is it's very difficult at the moment to calculate how much of this local supply actually is coming from IS. On Friday, even the oil ministry in Baghdad admitted now that their monthly figures for exports may be including black market oil, which they can't entirely quantify.
I mean, I would imagine, I would imagine its neighbors, Syria, the White House. I mean, the list goes on. They want to stop this because this black oil is used to fund the terrorist activities. I mean, I think that's quite obvious to everybody here. They want to stop it. Why is it so difficult to stop this in its entirety?
Well, in order to stop this, first of all, we have to put this in perspective. This is still a very small amount of oil. And what people don't recognize is that a group like ISIS has a rather large monthly budget. They have to maintain those troops, and they have to provide subsidies for the families of those troops. So it's only a matter of time before they start looking for ways to do that financing. In order to be able to close this down, you have to be able, first of all, to interdict the routes. Secondly, you have to put significant pressure under those who are receiving the oil, also those who are financing and transporting the oil. So this is actually a very large sanctions project. Fortunately, we've been through this at least once before. We were moderately successful in setting up the same structure to prevent a good deal of Iranian exports from reaching the market. Now the question is whether this region actually wants to introduce the same sort of policy against IS.
Kent, should we be worried that, you know, it spread from Syria now to northern Iraq, it almost spread to eastern Iraq, and in fact it kind of did. Should we be worried that this is going to spread even further, or is the situation contained, at least for now?
I don't think the situation is at all contained, Philip, and that's the great unknown danger. For those who are worried about ISIS, for example, taking over the main oil fields in southern Iraq, that's very unlikely to happen because this is Shiite-controlled territory, and the Shiite majority population will clearly resist them. The difficulty and the concern we have to have is the ability of ISIS's military movements to create instability in both Erbil, where you have the Kurdish government, regional government, and in Baghdad, where you have the central government. They don't have to take over Baghdad in order to affect a very serious consequence for the bulk of Iraqi oil. Are you
suggesting that they could possibly leverage off these pipelines, blow them up completely? I mean, there's always a concern that could happen, right? And ultimately, then that would affect the global oil price.
Well, it certainly would affect the global oil price. All they have to do is take over one segment of that Kirkuk-Jayan pipeline, and you have upwards to 20% of the Iraqi oil. The ability to get that into the market now becomes problematic. But here's the important thing, Philip. If you immobilize the central government in Baghdad and the Kurdish government in Erbil, none of the companies currently working these major oil fields have any indication of what the regulations are or what the authority and the administrative structure wants them to do. And that effectively is going to bring in a great uncertainty into the international market. We know, for example, that Chevron has already pulled its people out of Kurdistan in anticipation of the difficulties of defending Erbil. So this is already beginning.
Kent Moores, good to see you. Thank you very much for joining us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida.